Well, hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Reading Michael Jackson. I am your host, Lena, and I am so glad to be back here with you for episode 8 and to continue with our journey of reading Dancing the Dream. I am going to try to not have these episodes get exceptionally long. I feel like the last couple have been a little longer than I initially intended, at least. But this week it's difficult because as we progress through the book, there's more artwork to enjoy. And I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Now, if you have a copy of the book, then you know that we are now on page 22 and 23 for the piece Children of the World. With this piece, there is a beautiful drawing that is accompanying it. Now, it's not signed, and it's not directly indicated with a caption or anything like that who the artist is. So I flipped to the back of the book. I saw that David Nordhal and Nate Giorgio are the two artists that are credited in this book. And I Googled it to see, because I thought I knew that this was David Nordhal, but I wasn't 100% sure because you never know. And I Googled it, and I did find that this was in fact David Nordhal. It is a drawing of Michael leading a bunch of children of all different ethnicities and races and nationalities through a field and holding the hand of a couple of them. It looks like a field at Neverland, actually, but it's a beautiful drawing. Nevertheless, when I was Googling this, I stumbled upon a very interesting interview with David Nordhal. Based on the way it's written, now this is on, I think, it might be on a fan website, but I think it's linked from David Nordhal's website. I'm not sure. But it appears to be an article that was published as an interview with David. It doesn't list a date, but I get the impression that it was maybe when Michael was still alive in the final years of his life, maybe post 2007, before 2009. I'm not exactly sure. But it's a fantastic little interview that gives some really beautiful insights into Michael and his relationship with David, which I know a little bit about, but not a ton. If you're not familiar at all with what I'm talking about, David Nordhal is an American artist from the Midwest, very well-established and talented artist who apparently had a full-fledged artistic career before leaving that all behind to become a Michael Jackson portrait artist, or kind of his on-commission artist. So this interview gives some insight into how that relationship came to be, what kind of relationship and friendship they had. And to be honest, it sounds like quite an intimate friendship. He makes references to spending time with Michael and Michael's children. He makes references to, Michael's scalp surgery that he had after the Pepsi burn, and how some of the treatment and how Michael let him touch his head. He references what Michael looked like without makeup and where his vitiligo was the most prevalent. It's a really interesting interview, honestly. There were a few parts that I really enjoyed that I thought I would maybe just share because this is relevant. This is relevant, right? It's the words of the artist that's featured in the book that we're reading. So anyway, this just to tell you a little bit more, there's a few sections I really liked. He said that they met in 1988, I guess during the Bad Tour. Michael had identified his work, really liked it, was a fan, kind of contacted him and asked if he could get art lessons, which, I don't know, I find incredibly endearing. But, David said he's really busy. He didn't really have the time for it, but he'd consider it. They ended up meeting. He said they went to a King Tut exhibit. They went to art museums together, and they just talked and laughed and got along really well. At one point, he says that he ducked the media for years. And here's a quote. He said, "Because they wanted to talk about negative stuff, and I don't know anything bad about Michael. I always thought of him as normal," he says. "He's the most thoughtful, respectful person I've ever met. In 20 years, I never heard him raise his voice." And that's so consistent, right? With all the things we hear about Michael, people's impressions and experiences with him. That's just so consistent. The kindest, the gentlest, the most respectful, the most polite, all superlatives that are frequently used to describe Michael, unsurprisingly. And that consistency says a lot, I think, about Michael's character. He later says that when he first met Michael, he discovered the unglamorous side of him, describing him as in the late 80s, driving by himself in a Chevy Blazer and living in a 2-bedroom Los Angeles condo, which I think many of us know about. But if you don't know about it, Michael had a condo in the LA area that he would use when he would be recording for one of his albums. So he spent a lot of time there. I read a book recently that features the spot. The book was called An Agoraphobiac's Guide to Hollywood, How Michael Jackson Got Me Out of the House, written by screenwriter Darlene Craviato. Very interesting book, but it features some time that she spent with him at this condo. So needless to say, this is very true. Anyway, in the article, he is quoted describing, meeting Michael there. He says, "I expected a penthouse with maids. There was a grand piano pushed into the kitchen, a popcorn machine, and a good sound system. The other furniture, you couldn't have gotten $50 for it at a garage sale. Before the kids, Michael lived real simply." And then he goes on to talk about their similarities. They both grew up in difficult households, difficult relationships with their father, very young, inspired by the art that they were drawn to, kind of making their own way in the world in that sense. In the article, he goes on to really defend Michael, especially against the allegations that Michael faced in his lifetime based on, the things that he personally observed and experienced with Michael. He talks about how he was really a true father, and at one point describes one of, I think, Prince's birthday party when he was 8, and how all of his gifts were like Play-Doh and action figures, really just kind of basic stuff, and how they'd have to earn TV time and video game time and all of that, but by doing well in their homework and, things like that, which I find very endearing, because we learn about Michael, the human being, when we learn about the kind of parent he was. People like to say that Michael was sort of living a sheltered life or didn't have a real view of reality. But is that true? If he was raising his children to be prepared for a very realistic view of life rather than just doting upon them all the time and, spoiling them in all the ways we might expect a Hollywood parent to. I mean, I would say that his commitment to retaining some level of humility in his children and understanding of the value of money, as well as earning what you have in life, that does not speak to somebody who was incredibly sheltered, in my opinion. So I don't know. Needless to say, the article was very interesting and kind of fun to read before recording one of these. So I encourage you to look into Michael's relationship with David Nordhal, see if you can read a bit more about it. This is a man who seemed to really know him quite well. One we don't have a lot of fanfare about. So ripe with opportunity to learn more about Michael. So now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into the focus of this particular episode. This is another poem from the book called Children of the World. And, I've already given quite a bit of an introduction, so I think we will just dive right in. Children of the World. Children of the world, we'll do it. We'll meet on endless shores, making sandcastles and floating our boats, while people fight and defend their point of view, forever putting on masks that are new. We'll swing the tide of time and do it. Children of the world will do it, with song and dance and innocent bliss, and the soft caress of a loving kiss. We'll do it. While traders trade and haggle their price, and politicians try so hard to be nice, we'll meet on endless shores and floating our boats. We'll do it. While lawyers argue and doctors treat, stockbrokers quote the price on meat, while preachers preach and ring the bell, carpetbaggers with something to sell, We'll sing and dance in innocent bliss. With the soft caress of a loving kiss, we'll do it, meeting on endless shores, making sandcastles and floating our boats. We'll do it. We'll ride a rainbow, a cloud, a storm. Flying in the wind, we'll change our form. We'll touch the stars, embrace the moon. We'll break the barrier and be there soon. While architects plan their buildings high, and trade unions raise their hue and cry, while boardroom squabbles generate heat, and in secret places dealers meet, we'll sing and dance in innocent bliss. With the soft caress of a loving kiss, we'll do it. While philosophers grapple and continue to tackle endless dilemmas of body and mind, physicists wander, continue to ponder perennial questions of space and time. Archaeologists survey, continue to dig bygone treasures, small and big. Psychologists probe, analyze the tears of historical notions, phobias, and fears. While priests take confession in a serious session, and people struggle in the hustle and bustle, and the noise and din on the meaning of sin, we'll touch the stars, embrace the moon, break the barrier, arrive there soon, ride the rainbow, the cloud, the storm, flying in the wind, changing our form. Children of the world will do it, with song and dance and innocent bliss. The soft caress of a loving kiss will do it. Reading Children of the World, I can't help but wonder if this was at any point a song Michael was working on. The reason being, Michael includes a couple of different pieces in this book that are actually lyrics to songs. I believe Heal the World is somewhere in here. I think a few others perhaps. And the nature of this piece, with the repetition of certain lines and phrases, the structure, I just wonder, there's a sing-songy kind of quality to it that I can really see being a song, honestly. The repetition of "we'll do it." I don't know. I'm trying to imagine what the song might sound like. But it's the first impression that I get when I read this. When he says, "Children of the world will do it," what do we think he means? I mean, the entire piece is about continuing on in the face of, in spite of, in tandem with, however you want to think about it, continuing on with a certain kind of innocence in the world, along with everything else. He references, doctors and lawyers and physicists and psychologists and architects and, all the people we might think about as the creators and builders of society and civilization. He references them, sometimes in ways that feel positive and others less so. But he continues to say, "We'll do it." And at first, for me, the first couple of stanzas, I think he's talking about retaining innocence, and he's talking about the resilience of children and of the human spirit and the continuation of the life cycle and all of that. But then I feel as it continues, the focus on "we'll do it" becomes a bit more intense. I mean, if you even look at the ending, "Children of the world will do it, with song and dance and innocent bliss, the soft caress of a loving kiss will do it." It's almost like what starts out as this kind of reminder of the consistency of innocence in children almost becomes a call to action by the end. the importance of retaining something within ourselves, the importance of kind of showing up in society as bringing forth a certain level of, I don't know, joyous positivity. I'm not sure if that's exactly what I'm trying to say. But I mean, he ends with, we'll touch the stars, embrace the moon, break the barrier, arrive there soon, ride the rainbow, the cloud, the storm, flying in the wind, changing our form. There's something very spiritual about that to me. Maybe it's the references to nature, maybe specifically the flying in the wind and changing form. I'm not sure. But he says that all of that in direct opposition to what people are otherwise doing. Earlier in the stanza, he says, while priests take confession in a serious session and people struggle in the hustle and bustle and the noise and din on the meaning of sin. So the implication there is that the children of the world are not doing that. The children of the world are not contemplating what is sin. And if we remember in a previous piece, he talked about how there is no sin. So again, I think he's talking about something beyond literal children, literal playing in the sand, literal all of that. I believe the way I personally interpret this is he's talking more about a kind of enlightened state for all of us, not just young children, who I believe he's always kind of pointing out as the, kind of primary leaders in this sort of purity and thinking. But really, I think that he's not just talking to the children of the world. Now, again, he does have this drawing, at the left side of this poem, he has this drawing of himself leading children. So, we can take it literally in that sense, but I'm just speaking more about the way I'm reading it. And I read it as not just being about literal children. Although, of course, literal children are a part of it. Children of the world. It's like saying citizens of the world in a way, right? But I think he's talking to the pure of heart of the world, regardless of age. Which makes sense because it seemed that he idealized youth in terms of the way it kind of shapes one's reality and kind of simplicity of thinking. And so he respected the ability to get people to kind of reconnect with that sense of self, no matter their age. That's the way I read it, at least. So I hope that despite this being an episode that didn't entirely focus on the piece at hand, I hope that you still found it enjoyable and enjoyed the commentary about David Nordhal, as well as some of my thoughts as I read through and dissected the piece with you. And I do appreciate you returning once again to listen and be a part of this journey with me. Until we meet again in our next episode, I wish you all the best.